Alright guys, got the engine block cleaned up here. I'm going to ready to start going together with it. I'm waiting on bearings for the crankshaft and whatnot, but I'm going to throw the lifters in, at least in the first part of this video, and put the camshaft in it. Little lifters have to go in. Some lifters you can put in after you put them in after you put the camshaft in, and when the engine's standing upright, you drop them in from the top. But these are a hat lifter. And they call them that because they got this little thing that makes them look like a hat. And they go in from the bottom, just like so. They had them numbered in bags, which I was glad for. I had both those in one bag, you know, and so on. Keep them all in order and whatnot. But one thing I thought I'd add, got my camera fixed. Dang, SD card was bad. I don't know what made it go bad, but I put a new one in it and it fixed it, and it seems to be working. So we're just going to fix this one right now. And that's how you fix an SD card. Now I can't have that screwing up any more of my videos. Now, back to the productive side of things here. Sorry, I'm trying to get over a cold here. I would just put a little grease on the lifters and a little lubrication until the oil starts moving around in the engine for the first startup. Just kind of drop it in the bore. And I'll just do that and so on, and I'll come back to you here for the camshaft. Alright, lifters are back in here. Another thing, always blow, I already done it, but blow all the oil passages out before you ever put any stuff back in the engine. But just going to run some grease in here. Probably a little much grease, but that's alright. Actually, yeah, that was plenty of grease. Because these things are only like a 1 or 2 thousandths clearance on the bearings, or bushings is really what they are. And really, crankshaft bearings are just bushings cut in two, but they always call them bearings for some reason. Well, I suppose I can go like this. A little extra lubrication on the camshaft there. Camshaft. This camshaft, I kind of stained. I think I kind of let it rust a little bit, which ain't good, but it looked alright, so. There we go, not too bad. clean that up later. Now, I gotta find the bolts for it. This thing here, this cam retainer. Oops, right there. Put one bolt in right there, and then you can spin it and put the other bolt in right there. So put them in and torque it up, and then it'll be ready for the crankshaft. And once I get the bearings and whatnot. Alrighty guys, back on the 504. First part of this video, the camshaft part, was filmed probably 3 to 4 weeks ago. I had to send the crankshaft off. I was getting ready to put it in, and I put the bearings in the block, and I was about ready to set it in, and then I noticed where the thrust bearing rides right there was all eat up, and everything had grooves cut in it, and it had about 25 thousandths. I could fit a 25 thousandths. I could put the bearing in there like that and fit a 25 thousandths feeler gauge in there, and that ain't gonna work. So I had to take it to the machine shop, and they had to mail it up to Chicago to a place that welds that up and grinds it down. But we finally got her back and ready to put it back in now. I've got it all cleaned up here. Cleanliness is the key in putting these bearings in and getting everything, to run right and whatnot. So just remember that if you ever do one of these, or messing with crankshaft or rods or stuff like that and engine bearings. But anyway, I'm gonna put the bearings in here. They had to end up grinding the crank 10 under, because after they weld it, then they gotta go ahead and turn it down just a little bit to make everything true it back up. Make sure you get these lock tabs in there. Remember when I was in school, the teacher said, this one particular kid who was in school, his brother had gone through a couple years earlier, and this is in college. And in our engines class, we were putting them bearings in. The teacher goes, yeah, this one kid, he had them lock tabs. He wasn't sure if they were four, and he took the hammer and smashed them flat and put them in, had the bearings in backwards. And those tabs are on there, so when you put the cap on, that bearing can't rotate at all. It hits that, and the bearing can't rotate in the journal there, because then that'd be a spun bearing and it'd ruin a lot of stuff in a hurry. But yeah, just put those in, and usually in most engines, the lock tabs, they just put them on the same side, like the one, so that the cap will go right there. And on one of these, I could still see the print. I might have cleaned them off, but I could see the print. And so if you don't know which way the bearing cap goes on there, you can just tell by that. And then these caps are stamped on which number they are. That one's got a 3 right there, and then there's 2 and 1. And these lock tabs got to go on the same side, so they go like that in there. But I'll put the crankshaft in first. You gotta make sure these things are free of dirt, back here, because you get a little speck of dirt that could wear the bearing out prematurely. Bearing half here. And always pay attention to oil holes and whatnot. To make sure you're not blocking off an oil passage and whatnot for stuff. But I'll put the crank in. I always put a generous amount of the engine grease on there to just give it some lubrication when it first starts up for the first time. Alright, I got the crankshaft in. Obviously got the timing marks lined up over here on the gears. Got 2 of the 3 caps on them, put the 3rd cap on. I'm plastic gauging all 3 of these bearings. I always plastic gauge probably 2 main bearings. If you had a regular 6-cylinder, there's 7 of them in there, especially if it's a diesel. And 6 rod bearings. Usually I'll do 2 to 3 of each, just depending. If there's an uneven wear pattern on the bearings, I'd do more or do all of them. These look pretty good taking them out.
but I'm going to go ahead and do all these since I don't know the history on this engine or why they overhauled it. And then since it had the crank ground, I'll go ahead and do it just to make sure they got all that right and whatnot. Yeah, so this is mainly since I don't know much about this engine or the history on it. Go ahead and do it just kind of for a peace of mind. So what you do, you just take this bearing clearance is 1 to 4 thousandths that you're supposed to have on this particular engine, and this is 1 to 3 thousandths plastic gauge. So just tear you a little strip off like that. These things are a pisser to get opened up sometimes. Tear this one open. Open that up, get that little piece of just a little. They make a green and a red, and I think they make some other sizes too. Just get that, and I always put a little oil or just bring some grease over here. Just kind of try to stick it to the dang thing. There we go. You can come over here with the main bearing, make sure you got, and this groove, it's obviously not going to smash it there for the oil groove, and make sure you don't get in line at the holes either, because you got to try to clean that crap out. Get it all lined up, got the lock tab over here on this side. Don't take a hammer and smack it down, because that could affect it. It might smash the thing before you even torque it up, and then you just lost all your accuracy. You might think it's tighter than it really is. Take these bolts, a little oil on the threads. I always do this on all the bolts on these particular, just because since they're higher torques and whatnot, they actually will start kind of popping because there's some friction and you don't get a real even torque. They don't ever back off or anything, so they've designed that at the factory. The engineers have to, make sure that they don't back off. Run it into it's just snug with that. Now, this particular engine, back in the day here, they had kind of piss poor description on some stuff for service manuals. Like, they weren't real descriptive on stuff, particularly on the torque values. Newer piece of equipment, they're going to give you a torque value as you're doing a step-by-step putting it in there. They'll maybe tell you to go to like torque it to 25 foot-pounds into 60 and then bring it on up to 100 or whatever it is. I'll probably do these in 2 or 3 increments. They say these are a type 8 bolt going by their diagram here. They give you this in the front of the manual just to base stuff off of, depending on how many hash marks. It's just like a no marks is a type 1, which would be a grade 2 SAE grade, and then they have grade 5 and grade 8. These are grade 8 for the main cap bolts, but the problem is they're 1/2 inch bolt, coarse thread. They say if you're going into cast iron, you go across here, the torque is 104 to 117 foot-pounds is what it's rated at, and it's in Newton meters. They got a chart on the other side of this page here that is Newton meters, and it's even more than that. And if you just tighten it up as a nut or something, you're going to 115 to 130 foot-pounds, so that's even more. But then in my torque chart I have here, they only say for a 1/2 inch bolt, coarse thread bolt, to go to 95 foot-pounds going into cast iron. 110 if it's a fine thread. So I'm probably gonna torque it to 50 or so. Then I'll torque them to 95, see how they feel, and then I'll probably bring them up to 104, and I won't go any more than that because I'm just not real sure. I'd hate to either twist a bolt off or crack the block or something. So, a little bit of bolt knowledge there. Actually, I don't want that torque. That's the big one. That one only goes to 80. Starting out at 50, we'll just start out right there. Yeah, 3/4 impact work. Now let's go to 95. It's kind of harder on these higher ones to hold the engine stand still. Nicer engine stands have little screw things you put down and it raises it up off the tires. It's kind of nice. I don't really want to hurt these bolts too much, but that's definitely got it crushed in there, so I'm gonna go and actually I just rolled that and I shouldn't have done that. It probably wouldn't hurt it since I got oil on it, but anyway, let me pop those off and see what they look like. That's part of the reason I put grease on, is sometimes like I rolled the crankshaft. I shouldn't have done that, but if it would get rolled for whatever reason, it wouldn't mess up your mark and you got to redo it. It gives it something to ride against. This one, the plastic gauge stuck to the bearing. The other two, it stuck to the crank. And then you just take your fingernail and clean it off. We got 0.002 clearance on the middle main bearing, which is good because it's supposed to be 1 to 4. 0.002 there also. And on the thrust bearing, we got 0.002 also. That's good. So those bearing, that's good. That's what you need to do there. So I'll come back to here. We'll check the end play once I get it torqued up. Alright, I got all the bearings in. I torqued them to 105. I like round numbers, and I didn't want to go much over that because two of them started to feel just a little soft. So I'm thinking it's starting to stretch the bolt at that, but I don't know. You know, I just don't want to go over that, and that's tight enough. That's what they called for. So went over it at that. Got grease in them, and they all plastic gauged out alright, like I said. Now to check in play, just get your 2 halfway equally sized pry bars. Go in here, pry the crankshaft one direction, and right there we're at 16 thousandths in one direction. And there's going to take us to a strong 20 thousandths. Specs 4 to, I think they machined that a little tight. Spec is 4 to 10 thousandths, but we're at 4 thousandths, or strong 4 thousandths in play, so that'll work. Being a utility tractor, it'll be alright that it's tighter. It'll give it more to wear away because, you know, push on the clutch so much that, because that's what wears those bearings or thrust bearings, but that's what it is. So I think I'll probably do it here. Finally back on the 504, and I'll be putting the pistons in next. So thanks for watching.